Okay. Okay, we finished the last thing, which was about Shalom. We said there were three things: Emes, Shalom, and now is Mishpat. So, the word Mishpat, which means judgment or justice, of course, it involves everything that has to be done in the right way. But generally speaking, we're referring to monetary issues. The justice, that things should be done just, who owns the money, what's to be honest. In other words, there's a lot of halachas that relate to business, halachas that relate to partnership, halachas that relate to landlord and tenant, halachas that relate to damage. So I'm just going to mention a few of them, a few of the things that are considered part of the mishpat, because there's so much. There's an entire volume in the Shulchan Aruch with all the laws that pertain to monetary issues. But I just thought I would bring in one little part that deals with what I do that hurts another person. According to Torah, you're not allowed to do anything that'll hurt another person physically, of course, emotionally, or financially. And that's what we have here on page 22. Let's take a look what it says there. First of all, when you talk about physically, the halacha is not only you're not allowed to hurt another person, but from a story in Chumash, we learn that even if you just raise your hand to chas v'shalom, strike another person, even if you just raise your hand to strike them before you even do anything, that person's already considered a rasha. Where do we know this from? So on top of the page has these 5 words: rasha, loma, saka, esvayecha. Anyone recognize where that's from? Right. Moshe Rabbeinu, in the first parsha of Shemos, he saw 2 people arguing, and then one of them lifted his hand, and it's clear from other sources that he didn't touch him, he just lifted his hand, and Moshe Rabbeinu already addressed him with these words: Rasha, why do you hit your friend? Meaning, why do you even make a movement, even a nuance, which shows that you're going to hit him? So therefore, there's no question that there's nothing that justifies physically hitting another person. And most people say, he provoked me because he was very annoying. Annoying is not a reason to hit someone. It's not a license to hit someone in any way, form, or shape. Yes?
What about when kids are fighting, like siblings? It's the same? They are considered Russian because they're hitting each other? Or not just kids, let's say, I don't know, you're 13 years old or 14 and you're having this fight with your sibling.
First of all, I thought we meant kids. I thought you meant the 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. That's normal. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. But of course, it applies to family, just like it applies to anyone else. You're not allowed to. You want to get a point across, you can talk and talk and talk. And if you talk and it's not helping, you talk again. You work this way, you work that way. And let's say 2 people have an argument. If you're not getting away, go to a rav, you go to a bezdin, you do other things, but you're not allowed to lift your hand to hit. The only time you're allowed to lift your hand is in self-defense. If you have to strike the other person to defend yourself, then not only you're allowed to, you have to. Everybody's obligated to protect themselves. But other than that, there's no justification. No matter how annoying the other person is, it never gives me the right to be physical. Okay. Number 2, when you do damage to another person financially, again, this is just very general to be familiar. There is a difference between if I do the damage personally or something that's within my possession or an animal does damage. In other words, years ago, when everybody, today people have dogs and cats. Years ago, people had cows and goats and all these farm animals. So if my animal did damage to another person's possession, tore something or bent something, broke something, I am responsible to pay. It's my animal and I have to pay. There are a lot of details in the circumstances. When am I exempt? When am I responsible? And if I am responsible, how much do I have to pay? A lot of halachas. In fact, I want to just say in Gemara, there's so much laws pertaining to all these things that are financial that is actually such a huge tractate that they had to divide the tractate into 3 parts. So if you ever heard the term Baba Kama, it means it's the first part of that huge tractate. Baba Metzia means the middle part of that huge tractate. And then the third one is called Baba Basra, the final part of this tractate. Altogether, it's probably 400, over 400 pages probably, all about laws pertaining to interpersonal relationship and to obligations and exemptions and liability when it comes to money issues. So whatever I'm saying here is like the tip of the iceberg, just to be familiar with some ideas. What is the difference if my animal does damage or I myself with my hands hurt someone else? So the answer is when my animal does damage, I have to pay for the loss. If I myself do the damage, I hurt someone, there's 5 things that you have to pay for. That's what number 2 means, Chamisha Dvarim. So in Gemara, where somebody would say the 5 things, it's obvious what they're referring to. What are the 5 things? You have to pay for the damage, the loss. You have to pay the doctor bills. You have to pay the money they're losing from not going to work, if that's applicable. You have to pay separately for the pain, and you have to pay for the embarrassment. 5 things. So the next time you hit somebody, think twice before you do it.
So the 5th one is embarrassment?
Yeah, right. In other words, if
How
you,
do I pay for it?
in other words, if you hit someone, let's say they have a black and blue mark on their face, it's embarrassing. What?
How do you pay for it? How do you
The Gemara talks about how we evaluate all these things. There's so many details.
monetary.
There's a way of, monetary compensation. I mean, there's the Hebrew terms for this. Tsar, Ripu, Sheves, Beishas. Nezek, Tsar, Ripu, Sheves, Beishas. These are the 5 terms. The damage, the pain, the compensation for work, and the doctor bills. All this has to be, so it's a whole different category. Number 3 is another type of scenario where you're obligated, you're liable for something. There's a pasuk in Chumash where it says, "Lifnei iver le'sitin nichshel." Do not put a stumbling block before the blind. Obviously, this has to be somebody who is very sadistic. Person's got to be blind; they can't see what's in front of them, and you put something there so they should stumble and fall and get hurt. So you're not allowed to do that. It's based on an explicit pasuk in the Chumash. But the Gemara says there's another meaning to this. This is also in halacha. That you're not allowed to put a stumbling block in front of a blind person could also mean financially. For example, a person asks you advice, whether I should buy something or sell something, and you give them the wrong advice, intentionally, not because you didn't know. You gave them the wrong advice, so they should have a loss. That's putting a stumbling block in front of a blind person. They're blind, meaning not physically blind, but they're blind in terms of understanding finances, and you're giving them the wrong advice, and as a result of your advice, they're going to have a loss.
But you're giving them the wrong advice by purpose, no?
Yeah, intentional. If it's not intentional, it's not your fault. That's what you thought. You thought this is good. Then the Gemara says there's also a third scenario, and that is that can evolve spiritually. If I put down something in front of another person. Let's say someone comes to visit me and I put down food that's not kosher. I want to get rid of the food. I'm not going to tell them and they'll eat it. Or anything that I do that's misleading to another person to do an avera because I'm giving wrong information or I'm withholding information. That's also considered putting a stumbling block in front of the blind. That person doesn't know that the food is not kosher, it looks the same, but I do know. And if I give it to them, I'm putting the stumbling block in front of another person. And again, you can think of a lot of scenarios, but that's the general principle behind it. Another category of doing damage, which is in a different type of scenario completely, is called musr, an informer. Happens to be also something very severe. And it means, like, what do I do when I have a problem? I'm a landlord and my tenant is not paying rent. So I can't beat him up, okay, but what do? I need the money. So what a Jew is supposed to do is you go to the Bezdin, to the rabbinical court in your community, and you tell them this person is living in my house, he's not paying me rent, and the rabbinical court will call him and they will obligate him to pay the money. And the question is, what if he doesn't want to listen to the rabbinical court? So I don't care what the rabbi says.
Then you can go to the
So then the rabbi will give you permission to go to the secular courts and they will force him to pay what he has to pay. So if you go to a secular court or any kind of secular agency to inform against another person, that's considered musr. What's very common, you're living in a building and the landlord is not giving you steam. You call up the building department and you say, this landlord is not giving me steam, and they give him a summons or the penalty, whatever it may be. I'm not allowed to do that because you're not allowed to inform to a government agency against another Jew. So what should I do? I go to the Bezdin. And if the person says, I don't care about Bezdin, then the rabbi gives him permission to go to the secular court, but that's okay because the Torah is telling you that under these circumstances, go to the secular court. But if I don't have a sort of permission from a rabbi, because I never even tried to bring him to a rabbinical court, in that case, I'm liable. I'm violating this law of being an informer. So certainly if you're informing against a person that you get locked up in jail, that's much worse. Or like in the olden days where sometimes a person got locked up, they could have also got killed. The authorities could kill someone if they felt like it, they did something wrong, and you inform. So you're responsible for what happens to them, but even if it's only financial, nothing will happen to him physically, nothing will happen to his life. He's just going to lose money. It's still considered informing, and it's prohibited to do. It's another form of doing damage to another person. Number 5, Arba Ovis Nezikin. There are 4 primary forms of damage. So there's an entire tractate in Gemara called Baba Kama that's sort of based on these 4 scenarios of how the damage could be done. And even that, there are differences of opinion. What are the 4 exactly? But I'll make it simple. One is if I do damage myself personally, using my hands or anything else. Using a tool, doesn't matter, but it's me doing it. The second example is if my animal does it. The third example is not that I did it, or not that any animal that belongs to me did it, but I did something which caused damage to another person. For example, this is in the Chumash. If I dig a hole in the ground in the street and someone walks by and falls in and gets hurt, that's a third category of damage. In other words, in that case, the one who was causing the damage didn't go to the victim. The victim came to the cause, but I'm the one that created that cause. So if I leave a box outside, I leave a suitcase outside in the street and people walk and they fall and they trip over it, that's another kind of damage. And again, there are a lot of scenarios, and each one of these 3 have different halachas. Why did I say 4? Because one of them in one of them is divided into two parts. When the animal does damage, there's two possibilities. One possibility is when the animal does damage because it's an animal, just doing what animals do. For example, if an animal walks by someone's field or garden and eats whatever is there, the animal is not angry, is not intentionally attacking someone, just doing what animals do. An animal is walking, as they walk, he tramples something on the floor and breaks some things that were there. Animals don't distinguish between if there's a person on the floor, there's a vessel on the floor, there's grass on the floor, they just want to walk. That has one set of rules. The other set of rules is the animal does something intentionally to do damage, like an ox that puts his head down and charges at somebody to hit them. And many other possibilities where animals actually are attacking someone or attacking my animal, that is another set of rules. So it means altogether there are four categories. Two categories in my animal doing damage, and the other one is me doing damage, and the fourth one is nobody's doing any damage. The damage sort of happened, but it's as a result of something that I created, like putting a hole in the ground, putting a box on the street, pouring out water and people slip over it. These are the scenarios which are the fourth category of damage. Number 6 is these are words from the Chumash. It should be familiar to you. And it's the famous story where Yaakov went to get the blessing from Esau, right? And why did Yitzchak think that it's Esau? He was blind.
He put the skin of the goat on it.
Right. So he was very hairy, and he put the skin of a goat. So Yitzchak was touching his hand, and he felt all the hair. So he thought this was Esau. But then he said to him, it's strange, because your hands feel like Esau, but your voice sounds like Yaakov. So these words are also used sometimes in describing this thing, that when a person, God forbid, uses his hand to hurt someone, we refer to it as, these are Yadayim Yadei Esau. These are the hands of Esau. In fact, the Gemara actually uses that term and says that when God forbid Jews are in danger because Yadayim, the hands of Esau, want to attack, what can we do to protect ourselves? The voice of Yaakov. By studying Torah, and that's the voice of Yaakov, we can be protected from the hands of Esau. What?
I was just reiterating.
Oh. Did you ever hear anything otherwise, like what would justify hitting someone, using violence in any way possible?
Yeah.
Like what?
When someone is, how you say, coughing, and you hit that, so
Okay.
she's gonna feel better.
Yeah, but make sure you don't kill the person, just it should feel better.
Yeah, but it's not because of,
Right.
it's for having.
Yeah, no, because I once saw that happen. Somebody was coughing, the other one started to hit him on the back. He's like, wait a second, don't kill me. You know? Coming down so
No,
hard
but
and
like,
strong.
it helps.
Well, that's what
it
you're
really
supposed to do, of course, yeah.
It's like,
Like this.
yeah, it was like.
Yeah.
Now, for example, a little baby, sometimes they need to burp or they're coughing. You have to be very careful. It's a little child, you can't give a zest like that. So with an adult, you also have to be careful what you do and knock them out. Number 7, I'm not sure why I put it on this sheet, but it's here, so we'll talk about it. It's another form of damage, but it's not about doing damage to another person. Many people are not familiar with this either. Many people, I mean, usually children have this nature, but some adults take the nature along with them into adulthood. And that is, when they're sitting by a table, their hands are like always moving around, doing something. So there could be a cup there, you just tear it apart, you break it. Is it okay to just take something that is really useful and just destroy it? So actually, it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. that you're not allowed to destroy anything which still could be used and has use. If you're destroying it for a reason, and then it's different. But stam to destroy, it's called bal tashkas. Do not destroy. It reminds me of the story with the previous Rebbe, that he writes that he was once walking with his father. This was in the country area. They were walking down a road. There were a lot of trees on both sides. And he was a very young child. And he says, the nature of children is we walk by a tree, you tear off a leaf. And then he took the leaf and you're squeezing it in your hand. And my father, when he saw that, he turned to me and he said, it says in the Arizal that every leaf on a tree has a soul in it and is there for a purpose. So when you rip it off the tree and you destroy it, what you've done is you sort of interfered with the purpose of this particular leaf. It wasn't there for that purpose. It was there to grow. And the same thing with anything in the world. If you have a cup, take a table, a chair. If you break something that has use, so when you use something in a proper way, you're elevating it. And if you break it, you can no longer use it. It's almost like you can destroy the life of a person. Here, destroying the life of whatever is spiritually in this object or in this article. So you're not allowed to destroy something unless it's necessary for something else, which is important. But anyway, justice is not only when it comes to financial things, it's also in other areas. In what is justice in terms of or to be another example of justice and things that are not financial. Even though, mainly that's where it comes, but it could also be in other areas where there's just a question, what's moral, what's ethical? And that also is, justice. It's inappropriate to do something, inappropriate to say something, but a lot of those things fall under other categories. The word mishpat is mainly used when in dealing with justice and when it comes to financial issues, to deal with things. And in fact, one of the 7 mitzvahs of even non-Jews is that they have to set up a court that's going to have law and order and justice when it comes to all financial issues. Otherwise, people would just destroy each other. The world could not exist. So they don't have to follow Torah. They can have their own set of rules, but there has to be rules. What this belongs to me, then you can't do that. And if this belongs to you, I can't do the other. There has to be rules regarding partnership, rules regarding rent, rules regarding business, all these things that, and every country has its set of rules. Of course, unless it goes against any of the principles that relate to a non-Jew, but generally speaking, even non-Jews have to keep these laws because they're not allowed to steal. So there has to be justice in terms of how we deal with financial issues. Now that we finished this first chapter, what I want to do is, do you remember that I gave you this chart, this list in the beginning?
Yeah.
If some of you still have it. So I wanted to review all those terms or character traits that are mentioned, which ones we covered in chapter 1. Anyone that didn't get, that doesn't have it? You don't have it. So I made more copies. There's one sheet that has all the positive character traits, and one sheet has all the negative character traits. And it's written specifically with the terms that are used in Pirkei Avos and Torah. These are the negative character traits. Yeah. So the next time we have this class, we'll just go over, point out which of these characters we already covered in chapter 1, then do the same in chapter 2 and chapter 3. So when you mark it down, if you ever want to remind yourself, where did I learn about this or about that? I told you, this is the list that you go out on a shidduch. He has to have 72 positive character traits and none of the 63 negative character traits.
I'll tell you what.
Thank you. That was very good. Every day.
Yeah, it's in there.
That's in here.
Yeah.
Also, I did.
Same thing, yeah. Okay. Happy Hanukkah. Is there anyone here that didn't get Hanukkah last night? Yes, there are some people that didn't get Hanukkah.
Yeah, me.
You got it already.
From you? No.
Oh, no?
No,
Okay.
I wasn't there last night. I was right behind my sister.
Oh, no, because I gave it out in the class, but that was in the morning. Okay, so let me give it out. Hanukkah gelt. Who didn't get? Sure, you didn't get Hanukkah gelt. And for Hanukkah.
Wait, what now? As you can tell. I paid some attention to that. If you walk into the class, she had